Good morning and welcome to beautiful Wiltshire. It's Simon here from Hairy Dog Stoves Limited, and I would like to show you around our product, which is called Ammo Can Stove. And you've turned up just in time to see that the kettle is boiling nicely. So we'll take the kettle off, and then I'll just quickly take you around the stove. First of all, the principles behind Ammo Can Stove. We spent a number of years designing rocket stoves, as they're commonly called, and then realised after a while that we'd have to design a box or some kind of bag to fit them in. And then I had a bit of a revolutionary idea and discovered that the best type of can that we could find was a used military ammo can, hence the name Ammo Can Stove. All the components, the stove, the accessories, all fit inside the can nice and neatly, which means that you can move it around easily and keep the back of your car or camper van or Land Rover nice and clean. So let's just take you around some of the basic features. You can see down here at the bottom we have the lower air intake, and this is where you can feed in any type of wood that you can find, as long as it's nice and dry, and keep the fire going that way. Obviously you can also feed in your firewood from above, but also we've designed a diagonal feed chute. Now I'm just going to put my heat resistant glove on, which is of course provided with the kit, and just remove this end cap for you. Now the advantage of this diagonal infeed is that you can put scrap wood directly into the heart of the fire without having to disturb whatever you're cooking on top. And later on I'll also show you the advantage of using this when you use it as a charcoal burner. All the components slot together very nicely. The upper windshields, which don't have to be used, but the windshields are there, and they also fit nicely into the box. And the other important thing to note, as with any upright type of stove, is stability. So what we've done is we've put on, using snap links and split rings, 4 stability guy ropes, and they are pegged down into the ground. You also note that we've used some tent pegs to secure the stove itself onto the ground, and once again they come as part of the kit. You don't have to have it on top of the ammo can, but the advantage of that is that everything then becomes easy to cook because you're doing it at waist height and not down on the ground. In fact, you can use the ammo can stove directly onto any concrete type surface or stone surface, providing there's no risk of fire. Or in really bad conditions, you can slot the stove down inside the ammo can itself, and that is very useful if you've got really severe conditions or strong winds or you're bushcrafting. But obviously the most important thing to tell you is this is an outdoor stove and it's not to be used inside of tents, vehicles, trailers or caravans and the like. Ammo Can Stove. It also has stainless steel top meshes which fit nicely inside, which means if you're using smaller size cans, or you want to cook using a metal cup or something like that, you can easily do it. But more importantly, if you want to do your sausages or your steak, then you can cook directly on that. They can be easily moved up and down by using these little rods at the side, which means you can adjust your stainless steel mesh depending on how you want your steak cooked. Now, cooking with charcoal. We soon found out in our little trials that charcoal is an interesting material. It's readily available, it's nice and dry, and it puts out a tremendous amount of heat compared with just wood. But the thing about charcoal is you actually have to have the fire underneath the charcoal. It has to have a sufficient amount of air for it to work properly. So what we've done is we've designed a little internal mesh system Okay, like a little internal grate. And then that grate sits inside the stove using these two holes here and using some more rods. And then you light a fire underneath the charcoal and then use your diagonal infeed chute so that the charcoal itself rests on top of the internal grate. And then the fire is lit underneath, and then you get an adequate supply of air, and it lifts up the charcoal closer to what you want to cook, which means it's more efficient and you use far less of it. Otherwise you'd have to fill up the whole of the stove with charcoal for it to work decently. The internal grate is also useful later on, because I'm going to show you how we can convert the ammo can stove into a nice little meths burner. The ammo can stove can really be easily converted into a meths burner. Now, you might wonder why on earth you need a meths burner if you're going to be burning wood. Well, sometimes you're going to pull up into a campsite late at night, or if you're on the go, you want to pull out your stove and just want to make a quick brew. Then methylated spirits is a really good option. Meths is readily available from most DIY stores, but I like to keep it in a proper bottle with a screw lid. And then of course the ubiquitous meths burner, and of course then you need to have a pot to keep everything in, because the problem with meths, whilst it's a very good fuel in so much that meths burner stoves don't have any moving parts and they're very easy to operate, they do suffer a little bit from the wind. So what I've done with this stove, I've designed it so all you need to do is get your internal grate, which I showed you earlier, and then drop the grate into the stove. Notice how it goes quite comfortably past the pot holders, and then it rests onto the two rods which pass through the outside of the stove. And then you get your meths burner, remove the lid, and then fill up your burner with just a small amount of meths. You don't need a huge amount, you don't need to fill the whole pot unless you're doing an extended period of cooking. If you just want to make yourself or boil 1 litre of water, then you just need to fill it probably less than half full. Then place the meths burner inside the bottom of the stove, and then this is when I like to use one of these types of gas lighters with an extended rod. You remove the hot box lid, position this the burner so that it's quite close to the side, and then you can very easily and safely light the methylated spirits. And you'll see that it's lit quite nicely there. It starts off with an orangey blue flame, but then when that gets hot, then the meth starts to evaporate around the outside and starts to really burn away quite fiercely. Now, as I said earlier, the important thing about methylated spirits, or one of the disadvantages, is it can be quite badly affected by wind. So how I've designed it is to have it so that this metal billy can just drops nicely inside, out of the wind. Just take the cap out of the way, pop the lid on, and then replace the hot cap. Now, depending on wind conditions and depending on what you want to do with it, you can either open or completely close down the front air controller like that, and then that'll ensure that you can have a brew and the actual stove itself won't go out. And then all those components, the bottle, the tin can, the meths burner, and a pan grab, most importantly, all fit inside yet another small ammo can. So once it's boiling, it's really easy to remove, says he, fumbling with it, and take the can out without any problems. And with methylated spirits on a reasonable day, you can boil a litre of water in under 10 minutes. Okay, many thanks. So after a few minutes you can see that our water is boiling away nicely. So once again, using the heat resistant glove which is provided as part of the stove, you can lift up and remove the billy cam. Removing the lid, and you might just see my nice red bush tea bag in there, one of my favourite drinks. And using the pan grab, then we can make ourselves a nice hot cup of tea. Now, putting out the methylated spirits burner, the best thing to do, to be honest, is just to leave it to burn itself out. That's the safest thing to do, but you can sometimes blow it out by blowing really hard. And see if I can do it. Okay, there it goes, it's out and safe, and there's no chance of that causing any injury. The stove, as you can see, itself is just warm, not overly hot. If you're using it for an extended period of time, that could get a bit hotter. So you can put the stove away very quickly and be on your way. Time for tea.